Good morning, everyone. Today, I want to talk about something that's often uncomfortable but deeply necessary, the act of ghosting. I know it's a term we usually associate with relationships, maybe even with technology. But ghosting is not about being rude or avoiding people because you don't know how to handle difficult situations. It's not about leaving people in the lurch or abandoning your responsibilities. Ghosting is about something far more essential. It's about boundaries. It's about protecting your emotional well-being. And sometimes it's about choosing silence over endless explanations. Setting boundaries is not a sign of weakness or selfishness. It's an act of self-respect and emotional survival. We live in a world where expectations are constantly placed on us, whether it's from family, friends, coworkers, or even strangers. Everyone has a demand, a request, a need, and without clear boundaries, we can quickly become overwhelmed, drained, and resentful. Boundaries are not about shutting people out or being cold. They're about creating a space where you can exist without being depleted by others' needs, demands, or expectations. When we fail to set boundaries, we give others the permission to take more than we're willing or able to give. Over time, this builds emotional fatigue, stress, and even burnout. It's essential to recognize that we cannot pour from an empty cup. Boundaries are the container that allows us to preserve our own emotional health and vitality. They help us draw clear lines about what we are available for and what we are not, so we can engage with the world in a way that honors our own needs and limits. Setting boundaries can feel uncomfortable, especially if you're used to accommodating everyone around you. It's not easy to say no or to step back from relationships or situations that demand more than we are able to give. But it's important to understand that boundaries are a form of respect not just for yourself, but for others too. When we're clear about our boundaries, we help others understand how to engage with us in a way that is healthy and sustainable for both sides. Learning to set and maintain boundaries means being willing to disappoint others, and that can be difficult. We live in a culture that values people pleasing, that encourages us to be constantly available and endlessly accommodating. But the reality is, we can't be everything to everyone. The sooner we accept this truth, the sooner we can start to honor our own needs and begin to set limits that protect our emotional and mental well-being. Boundaries also serve as a tool for personal growth. They teach us how to prioritize what matters most to us and how to let go of things, people, or situations that no longer align with who we are or where we're going. By establishing clear boundaries, we create the space we need to nurture our own growth and well-being. This is not about being rigid or inflexible. It's about being intentional with our energy and making sure we are using it in ways that truly reflect our values and priorities. In the process of setting boundaries, it's vital to be honest with ourselves about our limitations. We need to understand that it's okay to say no, to step away, and to protect our time and energy. It's not an indication of failure. It's a declaration of what we are capable of handling in a healthy, balanced way. As we strengthen our ability to set boundaries, we begin to honor ourselves in a way that allows us to show up more fully for the people, projects, and causes that truly matter to us. Emotional energy is not an infinite resource. It's limited, just like our physical energy. Every day we face demands, interactions, and situations that require us to give a part of ourselves, our attention, our empathy, our focus, our care. Each of these things costs us something, whether we're aware of it or not. The more we give, the less we have left for ourselves. And without careful management, we can quickly find ourselves depleted. It's easy to fall into the trap of thinking that we can keep giving indefinitely. We are conditioned to be constantly available, to juggle multiple responsibilities, to be present for others, and to manage the expectations of the world around us. But when we give more than we can afford, when we overextend ourselves, our emotional energy becomes exhausted, leaving us feeling burnt out, resentful, and disconnected. In these moments, it can be hard to recognize that we've stretched ourselves too thin because there's often a pressure to keep going, to keep giving, and to keep pleasing. The truth is, emotional energy is just as finite as our physical energy. We only have so much to give in a day, and when that energy is depleted, it affects everything from our ability to be present in our relationships to how well we perform at work or how effectively we take care of ourselves. Yet, society doesn't always teach us to acknowledge these limitations. Instead, it often praises those who are endlessly giving, those who keep pushing through, as if their ability to run on empty is a virtue. But pushing through exhaustion doesn't make us strong, it makes us fragile. It makes us vulnerable to burnout and to losing touch with who we are and what we truly need. Recognizing the limits of our emotional energy isn't about weakness, it's about wisdom. It's about understanding that we cannot pour from an empty cup, that our emotional reserves need replenishment just like our physical ones. We have to be strategic about where we invest our emotional energy and who we give it to. Not every request for our time or attention deserves a yes. When we understand that emotional energy is finite, we also begin to see the importance of prioritization. It's not enough to simply react to what's in front of us. We must actively decide where our energy goes. There are people, activities, and obligations that nourish us, and there are those that drain us. By being conscious of where we direct our emotional energy, we are better able to preserve it for the things that matter most. We also need to recognize that managing our emotional energy requires regular maintenance. Just as we wouldn't expect our bodies to run on empty without rest, we can't expect ourselves to keep giving emotionally without taking time to recharge. We need time alone, time to reflect, time to reconnect with ourselves. We need to find moments of stillness and peace to restore what's been lost. And in doing so, we protect our ability to continue showing up in meaningful ways for others. Ultimately, understanding that emotional energy is finite forces us to confront some uncomfortable truths about how we live our lives. It challenges us to get clear about our priorities, to make hard choices about who and what gets our time and energy, and to take responsibility for our well-being. Reclaiming personal agency is about taking back control over our own lives, our choices, and our actions. It's about recognizing that we are the ones who ultimately decide how we up in the world and how we respond to the challenges, expectations, and pressures around us. Too often we allow external circumstances, other people's needs, or societal norms to dictate how we live. We allow ourselves to become swept up in the expectations others place on us, whether those expectations are about how we should act, what we should feel, or what we should prioritize. When we do this, we give up our sense of autonomy. We relinquish the power to make decisions that align with our true desires, values, and needs. Reclaiming personal agency starts with the realization that we have the right and the responsibility to make choices that honor who we are, not who others want us to be. It's about recognizing that we are not passive participants in our own lives. We are active agents in every decision, whether big or small. This doesn't mean we always get to control every situation or outcome, but it does mean that we get to decide how we show up and what we choose to do with the energy, resources, and time we have. Often we are conditioned to defer to others, to compromise our own needs for the sake of harmony, to keep quiet when we should speak up, or to stay in situations that don't serve us because we feel obligated or guilty. In doing so, we lose a piece of ourselves. We lose our voice, our authenticity, and our sense of empowerment. Reclaiming personal agency is the process of recognizing where we've given away our power and choosing to take it back. It's about understanding that we have a say in the direction of our lives, and that even small decisions, how we spend our time, who we spend it with, and what we prioritize can shape our experience of the world. When we reclaim our personal agency, we stop waiting for permission. We stop hoping someone else will validate our choices or tell us what's right. We become more in tune with our own intuition and values, and we trust ourselves to make decisions that are in alignment with who we want to become. It's about stepping into the fullness of who we are unapologetically and without hesitation. This means setting boundaries, saying no when necessary, and not feeling guilty for making choices that serve our well-being. Personal agency also means taking ownership of our emotions and responses. We are often taught to externalize blame or to look outside ourselves for reasons why things aren't going the way we want them to. But when we reclaim our agency, we stop giving others the power to control how we feel. We realize that we can choose how we respond to difficult situations, how we interpret events, and how we protect our emotional state. It's not about denying our feelings or pretending everything is fine when it's not. It's about taking responsibility for how we process and move through those feelings in a way that empowers us rather than disempowers us. Reclaiming personal agency also requires us to acknowledge that we deserve to be in control of our own lives. For many, this might be a radical concept, especially if we've been conditioned to think that our needs come last, that we must put others first, or that we have to live according to a set of external expectations. But when we understand that we are entitled to make decisions that honor our well-being, we begin to break free from the patterns that have kept us small, limited, and stuck. We stop seeking permission or validation from outside sources and instead trust that we are the best authority on what's right for us. The process of reclaiming personal agency is not always easy. It takes courage to step into our power, to acknowledge where we've given away control, and to make changes that will shift our lives in a new direction. It requires us to embrace discomfort, to face the fears of what others might think or how we might be judged, and to trust that we are capable of making the decisions that will lead us to a more fulfilled, authentic life. It means letting go of the need to please everyone, to constantly accommodate others' desires, and to realize that we are worthy of prioritizing ourselves. Growth is a natural process, but it is often misunderstood. Many of us think that growth is about adding more and more responsibilities, more commitments, more people, more things. But in reality, true growth often requires us to let go. It requires us to release what is no longer serving us, to free ourselves from the past, and to make space for the new. Growth is not a process of accumulation, it is a process of transformation, and transformation often demands that we shed the old to make way for the new. Letting go can be difficult, especially when we're holding on to things, people, or situations that we've invested a lot of time and energy into. We get attached to comfort, to what we know, and to what feels familiar. The fear of losing something or someone can make us hold on long after it's time to let go. We resist change because it feels uncertain, and we worry about the consequences of releasing something that has been a part of our life for so long. But if we don't let go, we stagnate. We limit our own growth by holding on to things that no longer align with who we are becoming. Letting go is not about giving up, it's about making room. It's about recognizing that in order to step into the next chapter of our lives, we need to clear the space for new possibilities. Sometimes this means letting go of outdated beliefs or patterns that have kept us stuck in a particular way of thinking. Sometimes it means releasing relationships that have become toxic or unbalanced, where the energy exchange is no longer healthy. It can mean moving on from jobs, places, or lifestyles that no longer reflect our values or aspirations. Letting go creates the opportunity for new experiences to enter our lives, experiences that align more closely with who we are and who we are becoming. At the heart of this process is the willingness to accept change. Change can feel threatening, especially when it feels like something is being taken from us. But in truth, we are the ones doing the releasing. We are the ones making the choice to let go, to free ourselves from things that no longer support our growth. This act of release is a declaration of trust in ourselves and in the process of life. It's a statement that we are ready to move forward, even if we don't know exactly what lies ahead. The idea that growth requires letting go also applies to the way we relate to ourselves. Often we hold on to old versions of who we were, our past mistakes, our failures, our regrets. These become heavy burdens that we carry, shaping our present and limiting our future. Letting go of these self-imposed limitations is crucial for growth. It's about forgiving ourselves for past missteps, learning from them, and then freeing ourselves from the weight of those memories. It's about recognizing that who we were is not who we have to be, and that each day offers the chance to start fresh, to choose new patterns, and to define ourselves in a way that aligns with our current reality. Growth requires us to be honest with ourselves about what is no longer working. Sometimes this is the hardest part, recognizing that a relationship, a job, a habit, or a belief system has outlived its usefulness. We may have outgrown them, and as painful as it can be to acknowledge, continuing to hold on to them only keeps us stuck. Letting go is about honoring what was, but also knowing when it's time to move on and make room for what is to come. The process of letting go can be a series of small, incremental steps, not always a dramatic, one-time decision. It might be saying no to something we've always said, yes to setting a boundary with someone who has crossed it, or even quietly walking away from a situation that no longer feels right. Each act of letting go, no matter how small, is a step toward deeper self-awareness and greater freedom. With each release, we create the space to expand, to evolve, and to embrace new opportunities that were once obscured by the weight of the old. Letting go also requires a certain level of trust in the process. It means trusting that even though we may not see the immediate rewards of letting go, the universe or life will fill the space in ways we cannot yet imagine. When we cling to the past or hold on to things that no longer serve us, we block the flow of new opportunities. Releasing them allows us to open ourselves to possibilities we couldn't have foreseen before. Trusting that something better is coming, that growth will follow, is a fundamental part of the letting go process. Growth isn't just about what we gain, it's about what we are willing to release in order to step into the next version of ourselves. It's about embracing the fact that letting go is an essential part of moving forward. To grow, we must be willing to shed the old, to release the things that hold us back, and to create space for the new. The myth of perpetual niceness is one that runs deep in our culture. We are often taught from a young age that being nice is one of the most important qualities we can possess. Niceness is seen as a virtue, something to be aspired to, and something that will make us liked, accepted, and safe. But over time, this emphasis on constant niceness can become a trap, one that leaves us feeling drained, disconnected, and unfulfilled. We start to believe that being nice means always putting others' needs before our own, never rocking the boat, and avoiding conflict at all costs. We are conditioned to smile, to accommodate, to please, and to be agreeable, often at the expense of our own well-being. The problem with this myth is that it conflates niceness with kindness when in fact they are not the same. Kindness comes from a place of authenticity and compassion. It involves empathy, understanding, and a desire to truly help others in a way that respects both their needs and our own. Niceness, on the other hand, often comes from a place of fear. It's about seeking approval, avoiding conflict, and maintaining a certain image. Niceness is about keeping things smooth, staying on the surface, and doing whatever it takes to avoid being disliked or rejected. It's about playing a role, not being real. When we buy into the myth of perpetual niceness, we start to suppress our true feelings, desires, and boundaries. We begin to prioritize what others think of us over what we need for ourselves. We might say yes when we mean no, agree to things we don't want to do, or hide our true emotions because we fear that expressing them will make others uncomfortable. We become people pleasers, bending ourselves in ways that are unsustainable, trying to meet everyone else's expectations while ignoring our own needs. This kind of constant accommodation doesn't serve us, and it certainly doesn't serve others in the long run. When we are trapped in the myth of perpetual niceness, we stop being honest both with ourselves and with those around us. We stop having real conversations and creating authentic connections. We may even start to feel resentful, frustrated, and exhausted, but because we are stuck in the cycle of niceness, we suppress those feelings instead of addressing them. We may feel like we have to keep going, to keep pleasing, to keep being nice, because we fear the consequences of stepping outside the bounds of what's expected. But here's the truth, niceness is not sustainable. It can only go so far before it begins to erode our sense of self. And what's worse, it can lead to unhealthy dynamics in our relationships. When we are constantly nice, we are not showing up as our authentic selves. Instead, we are hiding behind a mask, a version of ourselves that exists to meet the expectations of others, rather than to honor our own truth. And this creates a disconnect between who we are and who we present to the world. The pressure to be nice also leads to a lack of boundaries. If we are always trying to please others, we often forget that we have the right to say no, to protect our time and energy, and to choose where we invest our emotional resources. Being nice might mean overcommitting, saying yes when we're overwhelmed, or agreeing to things that don't align with our values. But when we let go of the myth of perpetual niceness, we create the space to set clear, healthy boundaries that protect our well-being. We allow ourselves the freedom to say no when we need to stand up for what we believe in, and to be honest about what we can and cannot do. When we free ourselves from the pressure to be constantly nice, we can be more genuinely kind. We can show up in ways that truly serve others, not out of obligation, but from a place of genuine care and compassion. We can engage in conversations that are real and honest, even when they're difficult. We can express our emotions authentically, knowing that our worth is not dependent on how much we please others. We can prioritize our own needs without guilt, knowing that taking care of ourselves enables us to show up more fully for the people and causes we care about. The myth of perpetual niceness tells us that in order to be accepted, we must be agreeable and non-threatening at all times. But the reality is that being true to ourselves, setting boundaries, and being honest about our needs creates deeper, more meaningful relationships. It's not about rejecting niceness altogether, but about recognizing that niceness for its own sake can be damaging. When we let go of the myth of perpetual niceness, we create space for more authentic, respectful, and compassionate interactions. We stop hiding behind pleasantries and start showing up as who we really are, flaws, boundaries, emotions, and all. Self-compassion in decision-making is about approaching the choices we make with the same kindness and understanding that we would offer to a friend. Too often, we are quick to criticize ourselves, to doubt our own judgment, or to feel guilty when we make a decision that doesn't turn out as we hoped. We hold ourselves to impossible standards, believing that we should always know the right answer or that our decisions should always lead to success. But this kind of self-judgment only creates more stress and anxiety, making the process of decision-making even more overwhelming. When we practice self-compassion, we give ourselves permission to make imperfect decisions without the constant fear of failure or the need for perfection. In decision-making, self-compassion means acknowledging that we are human and that we will make mistakes. It's recognizing that no decision is without risk and that there is no perfect way to navigate life's choices. Instead of berating ourselves for what we might perceive as a wrong decision, self-compassion encourages us to treat ourselves with the same empathy and understanding that we offer someone else who is going through a tough decision. This means not being overly harsh when we make a choice that doesn't work out, and not ruminating on our perceived flaws or shortcomings. When we are compassionate with ourselves, we take the pressure off. We stop holding ourselves to unrealistic expectations and start to trust that we are doing the best we can with the information and resources we have at the time. Making decisions from a place of self-compassion allows us to feel more confident in our ability to navigate uncertainty, knowing that even if the outcome is not what we hoped, we can learn and grow from the experience. Self-compassion helps us release the need for constant validation or approval from others, allowing us to make decisions that are more authentic to who we are and what we truly need. Moreover, self-compassion in decision-making helps us recognize when we're being too hard on ourselves, especially when we encounter setbacks or challenges. Instead of getting caught up in a cycle of self-blame or negative self-talk, self-compassion allows us to step back, take a breath, and remind ourselves that no one has a perfect track record of decisions. Life is complex, and there are always variables outside of our control. A compassionate approach allows us to focus on the growth and learning that comes from every experience rather than dwelling on our perceived failures. Another key aspect of self-compassion in decision-making is the ability to be gentle with ourselves when we feel conflicted or uncertain. It's natural to want to avoid difficult decisions, but often those are the very ones that require us to lean into our vulnerability. Being compassionate with ourselves means giving ourselves the space to sit with uncertainty, to recognize that it's okay not to have all the answers right away. It's about creating an environment where we can trust ourselves to make choices in alignment with our values, even if we're unsure of the immediate outcomes. When we practice self-compassion, we also allow ourselves to be imperfect. It's easy to get caught up in the idea that best decision is the one that leads to the least amount of discomfort or failure. But in reality, life is rarely that simple. Some decisions will involve discomfort, uncertainty, and even mistakes along the way, but those are often the very experiences that shape us and help us grow. Being kind to ourselves during these times means recognizing that imperfection is part of the human experience. And we don't need to be flawless in our decision-making to deserve our own love and respect. Self-compassion also means forgiving ourselves when we make decisions that we later regret. It's about releasing the grip of shame and self-criticism that can hold us back from moving forward. We all make choices that we wish we could change, but holding on to regret only keeps us stuck. Instead, self-compassion allows us to acknowledge what happened, learn from it, and move on with a greater sense of wisdom and resilience. By being gentle with ourselves, we free up emotional space to make better decisions in the future. When we bring self-compassion into our decision-making process, we move away from a mindset of scarcity, fear, or perfectionism, and we create space for a more balanced, grounded approach. It allows us to make choices from a place of self-trust rather than self-doubt, knowing that even if things don't go as planned, we can handle it with grace and patience. It encourages us to make decisions that honor our needs, values, and long-term goals instead of constantly seeking approval or avoiding discomfort. Ultimately, self-compassion in decision-making is about creating a mindset where we acknowledge our worth and ability to navigate life's complexities with kindness. It's about taking the pressure off, trusting ourselves more, and embracing the messiness of life, knowing that we are doing our best. Self-compassion frees us from the paralyzing grip of perfectionism and allows us to make choices from a place of self-acceptance and inner strength. In the end, embracing self-compassion in decision-making is about offering ourselves the grace to be human. It's about recognizing that we are not defined by our mistakes or the outcomes of our choices, but by the courage to make decisions aligned with our values, our needs, and our growth. We don't have to strive for perfection. We simply need to show up with authenticity, kindness, and a willingness to learn. When we treat ourselves with compassion, we create the emotional space needed to make decisions from a place of confidence, wisdom, and inner peace, rather than fear or doubt. Life will always present us with uncertainty, but with self-compassion as our foundation, we can navigate it with resilience, knowing that every step, whether forward or backward, is part of the journey toward becoming the best version of ourselves.